Hello there, scientists. Happy middle of the week. How are you today? Many of you are doing well. I love hearing that. I'm doing really well too. I was looking through the questions that students submitted, and I have another animal one picked out for today. But what did we learn about the last 2 days? Oh, you're right. We learned about aquatic, water, terrestrial, land, and amphibious, land and water, animals. We also focused our learning specifically on frogs. Let me try to remember their life cycle. They start as eyes. Oh, you're right. They just look like eyes. But they start as eggs, and then after their eggs, they're tad something. A tad older? That's not right. Tadpoles? Oh, yes. Okay, great job. After they're tadpoles, they're froglets, and then eventually they're frogs. Ha! Then they can lay eggs and start the cycle over again. What an exciting cycle. I'm ready to continue cycling through our student questions. I have a new one for today. The question we received today is also in Spanish, but remember, I'll translate it in case you don't know Spanish. The question is from a second grade scientist at Dolores Huerta Elementary. ¿Cómo están los animales en el zoológico? Which can mean two things. How are the animals at the zoo? Or how are the animals at the zoo doing? You know, like their feelings. Which question makes more sense for our scientific research? I agree. The translation, how are animals at the zoo, makes a bit more sense. I want to change it just a little though. How about, how do animals end up in the zoo? I think that question makes more sense. Why don't we write it down together? You can write it in your science notebook. How do animals end up in the zoo? Ooh. Did we put a period? No, question mark. Because it's a question. How do animals end up in the zoo? All right, I have our question written down, and let's start learning. How many of you have been to a zoo before? Wow, so many of you have been to zoos. I've been to a couple of zoos in my life too. What do you notice about zoos? Yes. I'm gonna write some of your responses, and you could write them too. So I heard students say that there are animals there. Yes, that's the whole point of them. Let's write animals. Animals. And zoo is short for zoological park. Zoology is the study of animals. That's why they have that name. Another thing that I had heard some zoologists here say is that zoos have habitats for the animals. That's right, they do. And I love that you remembered the scientific term for home. I'm gonna write habitat on our paper. And remember, you can follow along and write this in your notebook. So at zoos, I'm gonna put this up here. There's animals and habitats. Habitats. Okay, so these two things are the most essential to a zoo. You need animals and a place for them to live where they can get their needs met. Habitats have to meet living beings' needs in order for it to survive and thrive. But zoos didn't really start off the way that we see them now. A while back now, very, very rich families would have private collections of animals. They would do this to show off how much money they had. But over time, this started to change. Eventually, people wanted to be able to see animals from other countries in their own countries. So zoological parks, or zoos, started to become popular. People were also more interested in science, so they thought that a great way to study animals was to create a park for them. And most major cities now have their own zoos, like here in San Francisco, and the next city over, Oakland. Now, zoos still serve as a place to learn and observe animals, but they've also become refuge for animals that are becoming extinct. Have you heard of that word before? Extinct? Yeah, some of you have heard that word, and it's usually used when we talk about dinosaurs. Extinct means that something no longer exists. And this could be for any living thing, plant or animal. Animals that are close to extinction are sometimes kept in zoos so that they can be safe from hunters or so that they can find ways to continue that animal's life cycle and start another. But sometimes animals that don't need to be protected are in zoos, and this isn't always great for the animals. They're taken from their natural habitats and taken to much smaller ones. There's a lot to consider with zoos. They can help us learn a lot about animals and help us learn more about the world. But sometimes they also change an animal's life a lot. But you could still enjoy zoos. We just know a bit more about them now. Well, científicos, I hope you enjoyed learning about animals in the zoo. What was something new for you? I'm glad that you learned that. Zoos are fun and educational. I hope you can go to one soon. Please enjoy the rest of the episode, and thank you so much for learning with me. I can't wait to see what we learn about tomorrow.